Hey folks, Doomed Wizard here. Well, after about a year of playtesting, it finally happened. I finally got Strangeville where I want it, and it's now available at the Doomed Wizard Society as a downloadable PDF for now. Eventually, I'll have physical copies, but for now, it's a PDF that you can play with. This isn't the finished cover. I'm not a big fan of how this turned out. The picture looked great, but it didn't work when I had it printed. So I did my own cover, which you can see here. I think it goes better with the interior art than this does. So what is Strangeville, you're probably asking? Well, Strangeville is a OSR compatible, rules light role playing game where the GM and the players work together to create their world. It's a hack of Ben Milton's Knave, and it's compatible, like I said, with pretty much all old school games. So, like, there's no monsters, no spells, no nothing in this book that you pull from any other system, any system you want. There's rules for how to convert stuff in this book. Doesn't need a lot of converting, but there's a little bit maybe. I started out with some character creation, basically, similar to D&D and all the other games, you know, 3d6 six times, but where it's different is when you're rolling your 3d6, each roll you take your lowest roll, and then that becomes your bonus. So, like, say you roll a 5, a 7, and a 2. Well, that 2 becomes plus 2, and that goes to your what's called a check. You add 10, and that becomes your save. For instance, check save. So it would be like plus 2, and your save would be 12. Saves are what people need to roll against you. Checks are what you need to add to your d20 roll to see if you succeed. You don't need that, 17 or 11 because you never use it anyway. Looks good on paper, but you never really use it, to be fair. Once you roll the abilities, you can go ahead and assign them where you want. But what I would do first is what I recommend doing, and we've done this and it usually works out really well. We roll up some traits. Let's see if I can get a better angle at it. Yeah, we roll up some traits like, physique, your face, your age, and your gender. Now, I only use the binary system. You can do what you want. It was the 80s, so I'm just kind of keeping it in that tone. And there's a lot more. You got skin, your hair color, your virtues, your vices, like your speech pattern. Now, you roll these up. When you get them written down, you kind of look at what you've got, then go look at your stats and kind of place them where you would, like, to kind of where one accents the other. Now, gamers today like backstory, 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 backstory. It's all about backstory. Well, with things like misfortune and your parents and your alignment, which I'll get to in a minute, and your parents' occupation, you can kind of create, your backstory. Like, say for instance, you're some kind of weird misfit with a widowed mother who is in law enforcement. You can kind of write a good backstory off of that. If you tie in alignment, which I got here, my alignment is different. Um, that will really kind of round out your character really well. What I've done is I've created, instead of the standard good, chaotic, and neutral, I've come up with narc, slacker, and bogus as your alignments. Because it was the 80s, and we were all considered slackers. Slackers kind of like he's where you want to be. He's the sweet spot. I know a lot of games have done away with alignment, and I personally have pretty much gotten rid of it in most of the things I do, but it was all about labels in the 80s, so I wanted to come up with something that kind of reflected that. I gotta point something out. The art for this book. I didn't do this art. Let me see if I can find a really good example. The artist is a guy named Kim Diaz Home. He basically is anti-copyright, and he's got a ton of stuff that you can use as long as you give attribution. And I thought for a book that needed monsters and creepy small town creepiness, his artwork works perfectly for it. Check him out. He's on all the social platforms. Now, you have three tables for gear. You roll twice on this chart, once on this chart. And because I have item slots, it's pretty easy to, keep track of what you've got versus having walking around like a giant, junk pile. Then you got your transportation. Your transportation being bike, skateboard, scooter, or skates. Keep in mind you're playing middle schoolers, junior high kids, so you're not going to have your license. You might know somebody that does, and that could play into the game at some point. So I have the charts for how to put those together. I got a small list of basic weapons. You can again pull anything from any book you want and put it in there. This is just to kind of get you going. I have a section for firearms, but being as you're playing kids, the likelihood you're going to get your hands on a shotgun should be almost impossible. But cops, bad guys, they tend to be armed. So I gave out some, information on that. Item slots, like we talked about earlier. PCs have a number of item slots equal to their con save. So, say your con save is 13, you've got 13 item slots. Your average item takes up one, but sometimes they get bigger and they might take up a few more. Now we're on the subject of checks and saves. If a character attempts something where the outcome is uncertain and the failure has consequences, they make a check. To make a check, you add the check plus to a d20 roll. If it's greater than 15, you succeed. If you don't, you fail. As you go up in levels, you get to add points to your checks and saves. So while in the beginning this 15 might seem like a pretty daunting number, after you get to about +5 and +6, it's really pretty small. I have advantage and disadvantage, which if you played 5e or a lot of the games these days, they use advantage and disadvantage. I didn't like it when I first started using it, but now I absolutely love it. It's as a GM, it's a great little thing. You're like, you don't have to like worry about trying to figure out the logistics of a overhead attack and that kind of thing. You just roll advantage because you're above them. You have the high ground, Anakin. And while we're on the subject of advantage, I came up with group advantage. I always like it in the movies where like the characters are like it's like this is like a Hail Mary pass. It's your harebrained scheme that can't possibly work. You're outnumbered, you're outgunned, and somebody gives the speech, the Braveheart speech. But in this case, it would be like, say, like you're hiding in a closet in a haunted house, and there's burglars in it, and it reminds you of the time that your friend split his shorts in gym class, and you had to sneak out, and that kind of rallying speech kind of gives you a group advantage. What makes Strangeville different, I feel, is it's not GM against player when it comes to where they live. When you're doing your session zero, making your characters, have your players come up with a couple of urban legends that they've heard around town. You can use ones based on reality. My players pulled stuff out that I had forgotten about that were legends when we were little kids. And you take these ideas, you jot them down, you jot down some of your own, and make adventures based on the urban legends that your players give you that you like. You don't got to use all of them, but you don't have to tell them which ones are real and which ones are fake till they find out about it. It's a great way to engage your players, and my players absolutely love it. And while we're on this subject, no one's going to believe us because let's face it, in movies like Goonies and Monster Squad, those kind of great movies, it was always up to the kids to save the day because the police don't listen to them. Our parents never listened to us. They didn't care where we were. And don't get us started on what happened in the woods. So you kind of want to stress that it's up to you. Yeah, you can go to the police, but so you go to the police and the police are like, "Oh, you're just troublemaking kids. Go home," because nobody listened to kids back then. And by all means, use references. Steal with aplomb. Steal wherever you can. There's nothing more fun than when your players figure out what you're doing a little bit too late. Like in one adventure, I was doing the Ghost of Mr. Chicken, and my players had no clue till it was over, and then we were watching the Ghost of Mr. Chicken, and they were like, "Wait a minute!" But so it's steal with just steal everything. Speaking of stealing things like monsters and aliens and robots. What's the 80s without Johnny Five? Or, you know, E.T. or Wolfman's Got Nards. You can use any of the OSR, monsters with very little skinning, with very little reskinning. I have rules for how to fix them and adjust them for your game. Ways of doing armor, and even though there's no armor, there's just defense in this game. This shows you how to fix that problem when you're dealing with your monsters. And of course, not everything that goes bump in the night is supernatural or supernormal. Sometimes monsters are all too human. If you want to run a campaign where there's like a serial killer slasher in your neighborhood, it's relatively the same. You just create a NPC instead of a PC. Now, because most of your serial killers are probably adults, the simplest thing to do is just change their hit die from a D6 to a D8, and Bob's your uncle. There's ways of putting magic in the game. Because if you remember in Monster Squad, they had the spell book. Now, when I talked earlier about your saves and stuff improving as you advance in levels, every 1,000 XP you earn, you go up a level. When a PC gains a level, they raise the save and check bonuses of 3 different abilities of their choice by 1 point each. Ability save and checks may never be raised higher than 20 and plus 10. You also gain your con check in hit points. So say you have 8 hit points, and your con check is +2, then at the next level you would get 10. Well, there you have it. The PDF and the character sheets are available in the Dune Wizard Society. I've got at least a half a dozen adventures that I'm rather proud of that I'm going to be putting on there as the months progress. Um, please check it out, give it a play, let me know what you think, and as always, thanks for watching. Hey folks, if you like the channel and you haven't yet, why not do all the YouTube things like, comment, subscribe, and don't forget to hit that little bell icon. And while you're at it, why not head over to the Doomed Wizard Society and be the first wizard on your block to have an official society membership certificate, as well as my one-page RPG Operation Snake Eyes. I'll be adding more exclusive content each month. And if you're looking for some gothic fun, check out the 5e compatible adventure I illustrated, Council of Bones. If 5e is not your thing, it can easily be converted to almost any OSR style system. Links are in the description below. And as always, thanks for watching.